a regular surgeon in doing heart surgery because of the skills with hand-eye coordination kind of thing. Also, there's just that, and I'm not an anti-business guy, but certainly I'm just asking for a little bit more responsibility on the part of businesses in general, that they understand the effect of their business on the consumer. And certainly there are some downsides to what the games produce, certainly in sort of self-image, kind of you lose. I think it's in Mortal Kombat. It just is a very harsh kind of thing for a 6, 7-year-old to feel when their whole personality ego is growing, that if they don't win a video game, that becomes their whole life kind of view of themselves. And I'm all about certainly creating a balance to that. I think it's essential that as kids grow up playing these games, that they also develop their own sense of self. And that's part of the system that I want to bring into being, not only to help the competitors, but also just kids in general produce a different sort of mindset about themselves. So we both have the kind of looking out for the little guy perspective.
I've always done it. I've always tried to, pardon my French, kick the shit out of the bully.
Yeah,
I just I never liked the bully.
yeah.
And it's, I've always, because, I mean, I think at one time everybody has been the picked on.
Hmm.
And, depending on at what age of your life, I guess, psychologically,
Hmm.
that's burnt into you. I mean, I remember, as a kid getting picked on, and then I remember the first day making a kid have a bloody nose, and I
Hmm.
said, and from that day on, nobody ever picked on me again.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that we have to. It comes to that. One thing that I found in at a very young age was that fighting only begets fighting.
Yeah.
At 6 years old, I realized that. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stand up, and the second part of the phrase would be "and fight." And I mean, we're talking about 6, 7 years old. The observations that I was having, I had the distinct realization that if I started fighting, I was going to have to fight and fight. And for some reason, fighting never really made sense to me. I certainly have been in situations where I've had to fight, but to have that be a continual lifestyle, day after day. I mean, Bruce Lee, every day he went out his door, there was some guy that was challenging him right outside his door, waiting for him to come down the stairs. It just was not something that was attractive to me. I was going to find a way. So what Bruce said, the art of fighting without fighting, my sense of it is very clearly the art of winning without fighting. And I practiced that at that age of 6 and 7 by beating racist kids at their own game. And it's led me all the way to Hollywood, and on the way to really encounter my true life goal or purpose is in healing. And if anything, the designation would be martial healing. That it was not a style that I studied, but certainly through leaving the fighting aspect of martial arts, I got into a lot of study of the internal and sort of the more mystical side of things, and they have there remained while I've gathered information to build on an actual physical healing system, and not just the philosophy kind of thing. And so that's what I'm bringing out now. It does involve breathing. It's called Chushin, Chuushin, Chushindo, part of shangsarmy.com. It's just in its infancy of bringing out to the world. I'm looking very much to bring breathing to the consciousness. It's it has been kind of interesting people's reactions when I say I'm talking about breathing and, you know, some pretty high principles and philosophies, and they say, well, where are you going to start? You're saying that you have different areas that you want to affect. And when I tell them I want to be the first teacher, mentor to the gaming world, they kind of take 3 looks at me. Some of them walk away immediately like, this guy must be nuts. Be the first exercise system for gamers in using the breath. And having done that so far, I've had great results with gamers who use the breathing, whose performance goes up. And certainly it makes sense. Nobody's really thought about it. You know, gamers, what do? They just sit around and play, and, you know, they aren't physical and they aren't this. I mean, it's so much a common sort of perspective that whenever they talk about gamers, there's not a whole lot of good things that anybody has to say. That there's an incredible skill that's being honed at a very young age about hand-eye coordination, about focus and concentration. It's got to be stimulating the brain, got to be making the brain work a lot better than a whole lot of other endeavors. So using the breath is only going to help pump that up even more. So looking to become the point guard of a movement to bring breath to gamers, and through this experience of Mortal Kombat, have a great position to at least have people listen to. You know, the thing about the East Coast that I love the most, having lived on the West Coast most of my life, is that it seems that back east that people tend to really embrace the truth. They don't like the BS much.
No.
You know, and it doesn't take long for someone from the East Coast to like break it down to somebody from the West Coast when they start talking all that Hollywood kind of stuff. And I appreciate that. I am one for truth myself. That's why I don't really hang out much with Hollywood type people or actors. Just they talk too much about themselves all the time. You know, I'm too busy trying to figure out what the next step in healing's about. So that aspect of truth has driven me my whole life through everything that I've done. Certainly being the underdog, there's not much opportunity to bullshit anyway.
Yeah.
And so from my earliest childhood days, I've been absolutely focused on the truth and wanted to know what things were about, you know, what they were made of. And I'm finding, certainly in having been part of this health and healthcare healing kind of world, that there's some very simple principles here that can radically change sort of the human experience. And why I'm starting with gamers, that's a good question, James. I'm starting to interview myself.
I'm gonna let you go. Well, I was gonna ask you before you get into that. Can you give us an example, because we do have a member that all of us know who goes by the name of Check 4900, and he's studied your breathing for a while. Could you give an example, you know, of the benefits to it, as you know, as compared to you know, just, you know, let's be realistic in the gaming world. I mean, most people, you know, exercise is them going from the chair to the refrigerator to get a hot pocket, put it in the microwave, and get back in front of their game. The benefits of it, and if you could give us an example of the breathing techniques.
Sure. So, number one, no matter what we choose to pursue, in any pursuit, it ultimately breaks down that the thing that we have in common is our bodies. That the physical experience on this planet actually is the most common denominator, no matter who we are, what color, race, you know, any differences, sexual, gender, and anything that you can possibly use as a divisive point. It's absolutely the lowest common denominator, that we all share a body. And in that, with gamers overusing their brain and focus and concentration and not doing a lot of physical things, that this breathing brings a calm and a clarity. So if in fact a gamer understands that if he's actually calmer in his mind and not getting so emotionally wrapped up, which is built into the game to make you get all emotional and make you feel, you know, like shit if you lose, then that's the nature of the game. You slap you around, make you feel bad, gets you angry, and you get up and you try to beat the game, and the angrier you get, the more you lose. So one absolute key point is with the breathing system that I've been developing, and I did that with Check 4900. And
I know you're right in mid sentence, but the video just got really grainy. So you know, I'm going to drop you. You want to call me back? I don't know if it's my connection or your connection, but
sure,
one of us is lagging. So I'm going to drop you. Just give me a call right back.
Okay, will do.
All right.
All right.
All right, guys. Sorry about that, but I want to keep the video looking good. Yes, Disturbed. Check. Has been training with this guy. Okay, we're perfect again.
Okay. So, if a gamer realizes the game is set up to keep him off balance, to keep him playing the game, to keep him buying games in order to prove that he is better than the game, that he is number one, and all the kind of things that, you know, it absolutely has a certain purpose. You know, we are number one. We are Marshall. You know, we are SC. We are all that kind of definitely competitive feeling. I think there's a purpose to it, and then there's a point at which it works against us. When it starts creating absolute hate of your opponents that day. I mean, it happens. But there's a point in martial arts in which we respect our opponents. You know, we don't taunt them. We don't need to let them know, demean them, you know, typical kind of WWF kind of mentality. And certainly is coming into mixed martial arts, sadly.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to use the word martial arts, be a martial artist, you know. Otherwise, go do the fake wrestling kind of stuff. So, with this breathing, the realization that if you're giving your body what it needs, every cell needs oxygen. There are 50 to 70 trillion cells in your body. That everyone needing oxygen, that when you do deliver that oxygen to the cells, people do find themselves feeling calmer. And in being calmer, the brain is actually able to function and digest more information than it ever has. And in that way, the gamers that I have worked with, experiencing that kind of peace, maybe for the first time in their lives. It almost seems mystical, magical, you know, kind of flying through the air, martial arts kind of movie stuff. But in actuality, it has that kind of effect. So I have worked with Check 49, with different gamers. I'm about to teach some more gamers here fairly soon, and certainly some of your team. Ultimately, it'll be a worldwide kind of webinar format. This whole format of social media is just perfect for teaching. And as soon as I get home here in a couple of days, I'm going to hit the ground running, working to get into that format with people like Machinima. And we know Machinima and then the gaming site that it is, and where it's going toward is to be a sort of full-service TV network, you know, just a cable station that just it's destined to become a massive sort of machine. And based in gaming, and with Mortal Kombat Legacy being sponsored by Machinima, I think I have a slight in with them to discuss what I want to do in the gaming world by teaching this breathing.
All right, let me. I hate cutting, but I got people have given me. I'm well over like 40 questions deep here.
Okay.
From people.
Okay.
All right, first question comes from a player by the name of Beef Supreme.
Mm-hmm.
His first question was, how many takes did it take for you to do the "It Has Begun" scene? And was it awkward standing there with your arms up in the front of you, in front of a green screen, while scowling and looking all evil?
And rolling my eyes back in my head. Excellent question. Excellent first question to begin with. In actuality, it was one take.
Wow.
And that's the kind of focus and concentration that I've gained from this breathing, and certainly in the martial arts experience. That movie was the first time I had done any green screen work, and certainly Mortal Kombat was had a good range of special effects. And albeit now looking back, they were so it's funny, when I first saw those effects, and especially like where it comes from this long shot up to the tower, and then it goes into the little hole, and then we go in, and there's Shang Tsung with Sonya Blade, and I thought that stuff was corny stuff, boy. And I was just thinking, are people going to believe this stuff? It just, but realizing that not only that I didn't have any experience with it, what I was real clear was that as an actor, because they would add the effects later, and you weren't being affected by the effect, and just standing there in front of this green screen, that you better just pull the plug, and whatever it's going to take, blow that energy out, and let them shoot to create the effect that will match your emotion at that moment. If an actor doesn't give that kind of emotion, what good is an effect? So it certainly was way over. I knew that, and "It Has Begun" was one of those lines, along with, of course, the most classic "Your Soul Is Mine," in which, as an actor, when you read those lines, it's like, what? It's like, and so actors are constantly just going through, well, okay, so it has begun. Your soul is mine. And finally, I just gave up, and I said, if I don't just let it blow out, that I could sit here thinking forever how to deliver that line. And it was amazing. I was kind of surprised, actually, after that first take, and he said, "Moving on." And I was like, wow, whatever he saw, I won't see
it on one shot, so it was good enough.
And I was anxious by the time the film came out to see what actually was there, and that particular line and what they did with the effects, I was very happy with. Thanks for the question, man.
I'll say this, and like you said about East Coast, to use a typical East Coast pun, I don't blow smoke up people's asses, but I gotta say, had you not been in that movie, I don't think the movie would have been as successful. Your portrayal of Shang, and especially coming from somebody that's been part of the game since day one, your portrayal of Shang was, to use the word perfect isn't even enough. You came off actually being able to, and it's been hard for a lot of people to take video games and translate them to movies. The first movie, I think, me personally, I think Mortal Kombat 1 was the most successful, I could be wrong, but the most successful video game to movie transfer of any of the other games that have ever gotten turned into movies. But your portrayal of Shang, like, I mean, it made the movie what it was, without a doubt.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, of course, anybody would love to hear that sort of statement, and I do appreciate that very much. Thank you. And I can appreciate that from the fact that I did give it my all. I tend to do that with every role that I do. You know, I almost look at every film as my last film. And for those of you, you know, certainly have interest in what the filmmaking process is and what it's like to be an actor, what it is to be a celebrity, I take all that stuff so seriously because I know that people are so affected by it. I take it very seriously. I take a responsibility for giving 100% and really putting it out there. You know, a big part of it, I have to admit, comes from wanting people to understand. Well, first of all, to change the image of Japanese males. It's pretty basic. You know, when I was growing up, it was a lot of bad images about, especially Japanese males, but Asian males kind of being looked as wimpy. And I've always gone way out of my way to make sure that 1,000%, that I gave 1,000% to represent a certain kind of power and energy about it, because I grew up in a household that was very positively, you know, supportive of the samurai energy, the ninja energy, you know, and half my family on my mother's side were all part of the Imperial Japanese Navy. None of them came home; they all went down with their ships. So I was very aware that within our family bloodline, that there was some real heavy warrior kind of stuff. So if anything, good, bad, or indifferent, you know, and certainly not everybody needs to like me. I'm not concerned about everybody liking me, but I really do appreciate that comment. Thanks, man.
I got a second question from the same gentleman.
Uh-huh.
He goes, out of the following three, which duo did you enjoy working with the most? Lyndon Ashby and Robin Shue, Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery, or Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito?
Interesting. Who is this guy? What's his name?
This is Beef Supreme. He's one of my OBS members.
Oh, Beef Supreme. Beef?
Beef Supreme, like the burrito.
Right. Okay, Beef Supreme. Greetings, aloha. Thanks for these questions. They're really questions that I've never been asked before, so really, I always appreciate those kind of questions. And not that I don't appreciate all questions, but certainly between those three, let me just describe what it was like. Lyndon Ashby and Robin Shue. Lyndon was very much like the character he played, Johnny Cage. And we know Johnny Cage is a bit jerky. I'm just telling you guys straight up. So you asked the question. Don't blame me.
This is the On Blast show.
Okay, well, there's only one time that I have to bullshit, and that's when I get on tour, publicity tour, and there are certain things that I have to say that it doesn't kill me to say it, so I do it for that. But I'm always glad to be on a show like this where I can just be very open. Lyndon at the time was a bit of a jerk. He knew it, and he was taking advantage of it, and he was a nice guy. He just, you know, he was doing good in it. And he was a funny guy. You know, the scene where he asked Liu Kang to take his bags, and then Liu Kang picks him up and dumps him over the wharf. The line that Lyndon came up with after that as a reaction was, good thing I didn't ask him to park the car. Lyndon was absolutely spontaneous in those kind of moments, and a lot of lines came from him. Excuse me. And so he was good at what he was doing, and there were certainly times that he was a bit of a jerk. Robin was a whole different case, and you know, talking about the Asian thing, I'm always especially looking to single out Asian actors and look to share with them my experience, good, bad, or indifferent. And Robin was no exception. And from the beginning, knowing that, you know, it was his first kind of American movie. He had done a lot of Hong Kong movies, and on the internet we see, you know, his skill in martial arts. Excellent. Just Hong Kong. And we heard a lot of Hong Kong stories on the set. Sorry, I got something stuck here. Um, and and so I looked very much to befriend him so that anytime when he wasn't feeling quite confident, or the energy, you know, try to distract him from getting too deep into anything that was going to stop his performance, I took him under my wing. I'm just like that. I'm just, like I said, always for the underdog. And between the two, it was a bit of work. I mean, not just to tell Lyndon off some of the times, and for me to always be available there for Robin. Sad story, you know, during the shooting of Mortal Kombat, his mother passed away.
Oh, yeah.
And while we were in Thailand, we had a Buddhist ceremony for his mother, and actually took off some time. It was in December of 84, of 94, so that Robin could kind of go through the experience, and then we finished the film. And he did well. I mean, he did really well. I really have to applaud him on that. The one thing that I cautioned him, and again, I don't say this out of any malice, it's just so that we can all kind of understand, you know, the dangers of Hollywood, is if you take yourself seriously because you're part of a movie, or however well that movie does, I kept telling him, Robin, the only problem you're going to have is if, in fact, it gets to you. You know, if you don't stay real, it'll get to you. And he had his moment of unrealness that when they did the second one, and that most of us got left out except for Robin and Talisa Soto. What a beautiful woman. It got to him a little bit, and it was sad. And from that, we haven't really spoken in all this time. It's not he's a bad person. It's just the kind of thing that can happen in Hollywood. Yeah. And so between those two, that was that. I would have to say, and the other situation of Danny DeVito and Schwarzenegger, Arnold at that time was living in the Santa Monica, Venice area of California. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Venice Beach is kind of a circus-y, kind of boardwalk, free-for-all kind of energy. And Arnold was famous, of course, for the Gold's Gym thing, and that was in Venice. And so at that time, I knew what all that hype was about. That's why when I came in, I tended to be real from the beginning and just kind of kept to myself and did my job. And that whole sequence that I had with Arnold on the beach as his martial arts mentor, and they tried to make me look like old, you know, like 60 years old, and they put a wig on, and we were doing all this gray hair kind of nonsense. They should have just gotten an older guy. It wouldn't have been a big stretch. But he was definitely riding his own wave, the Arnold wave. And, you know, just, again, part of Hollywood. I never really got to work with Danny DeVito. Although the legacy, you know, of my career to have been in that film, I really appreciate. I can't explain it, but it's almost like every 2 years I've been in an A-list Hollywood movie, which simply means that there was Asian content about every 2 years throughout my career, and just been very fortunate. The final one is the one that was the most satisfying between Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes, certainly because Sean Connery had been my hero, you know, growing up watching James Bond, and he's just, I mean, he's an icon. What can you say? Top drawer kind of actor. And there are certainly actors that have that level of skill, and possibly more as skill as an actor, but his combined skill and his presence, just his physical presence, it's something that has always inspired me about him. And when I got to work with him, I experienced it firsthand that he has that presence just naturally. There was a story about him that when he auditioned for the role of James Bond, that he was not pulling any punches. He wasn't kissing ass. He just was himself, and they considered that slightly to be arrogant because the opportunity and who these producers thought they were. They're the worst. Producer attitude. People talk about actors' attitude, but in fact, to me, producers are much worse. So he kind of acted as himself. They didn't like it. They thought he was a bit arrogant. And when they saw him, they looked out the window as he was crossing the parking lot. And the way that he walked was what they believed James Bond should walk like. He had been a merchant marine. That's how come he's just, straight up honest kind of guy, and was a bodybuilder. And not many people know that about him, but he was very physical for that time. So that was great to work with him because of him being my hero. And Wesley was a very interesting character, to be paid $6 million at 30 years old. I think he had his birthday during Rising Sun. A martial artist of 20 years, just young, up-and-coming kind of guy. And we got along well. We talked a lot about martial arts. We talked about doing some film together, and later we did with Art of War. Good guy. It got away from him too, and him going to jail over taxes was part of that attitude. An attitude can develop.
That's insane. When I heard that, I was like, I can't believe. I don't care whatever the government wants. I give them. Just leave me alone.
Yeah. It's a simple thing, and certainly Hollywood attitude got him into trouble over that. And but good guy. I wish him well. I hope that he certainly can have a comeback and be part of Hollywood again in a big way. Yeah. So that was a long, short version of an answer. But thanks for the question. Beef Supreme. That's cool.
All right. Next question I have is from a gentleman by the name of, he calls himself GDF.
Mm-hmm.
He says, who was the most influential figure in your life?
Hands down was my mother. And my dad, coming from a very poor family in Hawaii, being Japanese, and his father having to clean toilets, and he was working in the pineapple fields when he was 11 and 12 years old. A very, very hard life. And he was used to working hard. I hardly saw him in growing up at a very young age. He was full-time in the U.S. Army, and then he always had another full-time job. So he worked 16 hours a day. So we saw him very little. And so spent a lot of time with my mother. My mother was a very strong Japanese woman, very proud Japanese woman, just always taught me to be very proud of being Japanese. Later, when I found out that Japanese didn't do all kinds of, or did do some things that were not quite honorable or positive, it really kind of shook me up a bit. But she instilled in me the kind of principles that brought me to where I am today. And in this next step, I really look at this next step, which I would like to talk about in a bit. But her influence from the acting, about character, about never giving up, very Japanese basic tenet that you never surrender, that you continue until you expire. I'm the kind of guy, and based on being raised in that fashion, and I would encourage those of you that respond to this statement that you have a greater chance of succeeding than not. Excuse me. I'm the kind of guy that if you tell me there's 1 in a million chance, I smile and I say, I'll take it. And if you tell me there's 0 in a million chances, I say, well, I'll make the one and then I'll take that one. So I'm basically unstoppable. You got to put a bullet in my head to stop me. You know, and I think that's what part of this generation is missing is sort of the encouragement to believe in things, you know. It just, that's part of why I'm heading into the gaming world first. I really feel that it's important for kids to, because they're being subjected so much to hype, that they learn the hype game, what it's about, how to take care of yourselves. You've got to learn how to take care of yourselves. You know, if you're blaming somebody else for your own sort of situation, it means you never understood how much power you have to change that. Feeling powerless, feeling like a victim, whining, complaining. It's like,
we have that running amok in our community.
well, you know, it's not surprising considering that the gaming industry is based on pumping egos and putting you down if you don't win. So what do you expect? You know, it's I understand that, but with the system that I'm bringing and with the attitude that I'm bringing, I'm definitely an attitude for an old man. I have not quit in the attitude department. I've just chosen to take a different perspective and use a positive attitude. But even beyond just being positive, because sometimes, you know, the opposite end of weenie whiny kind of is overly optimistic and, oh yes, you can do it. It's a good thing, and I did it, and you can do it. It's like I never say that to people. I don't say, you can do anything, look at me. I think it's one of the most inane things I ever heard, for somebody to say that to another person, because everybody's experience is different. I think the one thing that I do encourage is that one statement about 1 in a million and 0 in a million. That part of it is very much my point of inspiration. Yeah. I even forgot the question, James.
It was the most influential figure in your life. I believe you were saying your father.
I was saying that actually it was my mother, because my father and I didn't have much time together. But I almost feel like a very typical ghetto relationship with mothers. You know, so much in the ghetto, there is a lack of male figures, and typically ghetto mothers tend to be the one, you know, that's left with the weight of raising kids, and they have to be strong. And I had a very strong mother, and I was quite rebellious, so she couldn't always keep me in line, but the strength I did very much get from her. She was the most influential figure. You know, typically it would seem that I should be mentioning martial arts mentors and male sort of inspiration, and I didn't have that in my life. Kind of had to build my own character, and certainly have made mistakes along the way. Some things I absolutely, completely feel bad about, feel sorry for. I don't feel guilty anymore. I did for a long time, but you know, to me, here's another thing that I would say, that if you heard it from Tagawa, of the things that mean a lot to me, it's not how many times you get knocked down. Never give up. You know, and the sort of typical thing is for people to say, what matters is how many times you get up, not how many times you're knocked down. And that to me has certainly been a great tenet, great idea in my life that has inspired me, is that I never take falling down to be anything final. It's just a temporary way of finding out that there's something more to learn, but never having the idea that if I went down the next time, I was never going to get up. I was always clear that I was going to get up. And I want you guys to really take that into consideration and in all your daily kind of life stuff. Wandering through the wilderness of gaming.
I'm gonna do this because, and I hate to say this, but because the answers, I don't want to keep you all night. I mean, I usually stay on till 6 in the morning,
Right.
so I mean this show's got all night. But I'm gonna skim through because a lot of these guys, I mean, I've gotten over 40 questions. So this one we
I
kind
got all
of.
night, James. I'm one of those guys that can keep up with you. There's one thing in having met you and sitting down and having dinner. Thanks for that dinner.
No
That
problem.
was beautiful. Um, I don't think you've met many people that have your energy level.
I was
And for,
kind of that kind of. I will admit that kind of took me back. I was like, and I was saying, man, this older guy probably gonna have to take him home soon, you know, and he's gonna have to take a nap or something. And you were going and going. You were on that phone nonstop. You were bouncing all over the place. I'm saying, man, I said I've never met somebody that goes as much as I do.
yeah, so when you say you can go all night, I can too. So no, don't take that into consideration. I'm one of those actors, and you're finding that out now. I love to talk, and it's not just like talking aimlessly. I really am very clear about questions. I take them very seriously, and I appreciate people who ask those questions. I'm just
A bunch of guys are
one of those.
commenting in the chat saying that they wish you were their grandfather.
Oh, that was one of my most favorite roles. Is where I did play a grandfather, called Johnny Tsunami for Disney Channel, and it was most like my character. I played a grandfather, a young grandfather. In Hawaii, we have grandfathers that are 50 years old because kids get married very early. And so it was about a surfing grandfather, his grandson who was absolutely wanted to be like his grandpa, who was a surfing legend, and a son who was a computer geek, and this was like, no, you got to do this, and you got to, do something real. You can't just be hanging out like your grandfather. And I'm very much like that. And it's a natural part of, although I'm not a grandfather, I have 3 children. And I really look forward to becoming a grandfather, but that's kind of the work I'm doing. I believe in this next step in presenting my own work, is having that mentor, kind of uncle, grandfather kind of vibe. I'm very natural at doing that. I have such patience and understanding, and I can be hardcore. Trust me, it's not always the smiles that you're experiencing now. In fact, that's been an odd part of my career, especially as a healer. I probably was the only healer that ever went into Hollywood. That, as being a healer, the first role I played was to be a torturing acupuncturist.
I was just gonna say it's funny because I read somewhere, I forgot where I came across it, but somebody did a write up on you, and they had mentioned that everybody that's ever worked with you has said you've had nothing but an absolute pleasant disposition, no matter
Yeah.
what. And then I look at the characters that you
Oh, yeah.
portray, and I'm going, how do you go from one to the other in so kind of, drop of a dime? I mean, I guess that's just the profession itself and being in the business. But that, I mean, that's a skill set in itself. I mean, I'm usually portrayed as, either the wannabe mafia guy or the guy that's
Right.
always looking to fight. And then, like I said,
Yeah.
same thing. When people meet me, they're like, I kind of thought you were a dick, and then when I met you, you were cool.
Yeah, that's why they call it acting. But there's one thing about there is a skill set about playing bad guys, and I think you can't really play a good bad guy unless you have some sort of understanding of who those people are. And to me, in having played bad guys so much, I actually look, and because bad guys are written so thin,
Hmm.
there's really not, a whole lot of character that goes into writing a bad guy. And certainly before Hannibal Lecter, I mean, I think he was one that really highlighted bad guys, and people started looking at bad guys a much deeper way after Hannibal Lecter. But for the kind of action stuff that I played and characters, in order to make it real for me, I always look into creating a character that I can identify with in this way. I like to think of the guy and what he was like when he was a kid. And what I come to in all the bad guys that I've ever created, they were all abused kids. Physically, mentally, spiritually, just abused somehow. To where when you're a kid and someone's taking advantage of you because they're bigger than you are, you're gonna get pissed. I mean, what do you expect? How could somebody, turn out to be a great guy from being abused? So I just, you know, multiply that times 10, pump it up, and develop these really mean guys. Yeah. So
Yeah, there's been a couple of roles that you've taken that even made me step back and go, you know what? And off the top of my head, I can't remember the movie if it was the one with Dolph Lundgren where
yeah, Showdown Little
Showdown
Tokyo.
Little Tokyo. Is that the
Yeah,
one where you
Showdown.
cut the
Like,
girl, you kill the girl?
yeah, cut her head off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That I gotta say, there's few movies that have made me say, "Ouch, that's a bad guy. I don't want to fuck with."
Yeah. That's one thing. And again, it's all about commitment. If you don't, first of all, if you don't find something that you can understand about the character, believe in, you can't deliver that kind of scariness. It's funny because growing up, I used to get really mad, of course, growing up in the South, and my mother would see how angry I would get, and at times I would blow out at her, and she would get all scared and say that to scare people was a sin. So I guess I've made that sin
That's a lot.
work.
I've sinned a lot then.
It made it work for a livelihood.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna roll along with questions here because they're still
Yeah.
piling up on me.
Okay.
This one's actually kind of a repeat, but we'll get the short bridged version. Tatari Manx asked, "Why did you get into acting?"
Uh, well, certainly my mother had a great influence in that. Through her attention of taking time to talk to me about acting and actors' performances, those things at a very young age, 6, 7, 8 years old, was a great influence. And growing up in the South, certainly I didn't have a lot of friends, and movies were a great escape. I mean, go to Saturday matinees. In those days we had um, shows like The Lone Ranger and stuff that we would go and see in the theater every Saturday before a movie, and had cartoons, and it was just such a great way to escape. It was a fantasy world that I really experienced a lot when I was young, and as I understood acting, it just seemed to me that it wasn't much different than being the kid that I grew up to be. Is a lot in fantasy and making up stories, pretending. I really like pretending. I was very much always in front of my class. I was like the MC for the Christmas program. I was a student class representative. I was a student body president. I played King Arthur in Camelot. Imagine that. The only Japanese besides my brother in the whole school, and I played King Arthur, this English king, kind of singing songs on stage. And so I was always, if not a ham, I always pushed myself, and in fact I did. I had to push hard kind of at times because I was so scared of, and embarrassed and things like that, but should never let that stop you. But you do have to have a very strong intention and purpose for whatever it is you do. Mine certainly had to do with representing Japanese. It wasn't about getting a star on Hollywood Boulevard. It had a spiritual purpose. So, sorry, that was the kind of inspiration that I had that brought me to acting.
Mike Metroid asks, what did I say? I said ask because my co-host can't stay because he's got a tongue ring, so he says asses. Um, so Mike Metroid asks, how does it feel to predominantly play the bad guy? I mean, is it predominantly or are you always the bad guy? I mean, beyond the kids' movies,
Yeah. No, it's about 8 out of 10. Out of 10, I may get that odd two roles, and certainly Johnny Tsunami was one of them. A film that's coming out next year called Little Boy, a story a story about a relationship between a 7-year-old and a 70-year-old man uh, during World War II, when this gentleman comes back from an internment camp where a lot of the Japanese on the West Coast were put into internment camps. So he comes back to his hometown, and in a very racist situation, certainly during World War II, and encounters this 7-year-old boy through his best friend, a priest, my best friend, and a very good guy, one of the best roles I played. Um, the way it feels, I've given it an intention and purpose. If you want to create change, you don't whine and complain and protest. What you do is you jump right into the middle of it. And change to me happens from inside and not just complaining from the outside. So certainly it wasn't my choice to play bad guys. I'm not a bad guy. I can be, and I have been in my life at times, lost control and been very bad. But
that we all have.
yeah, and then so just that we haven't let that stop us from pursuing the better half of who we are. Um, what I did was take a very, very strong stand that, all right, you're going to give me the bad guy? I will give you a bad guy. And I'll give you a bad guy so bad that you won't forget me. And the worst thing you could do as an actor is to, when someone asks you, oh, well, what films have you been in? And so you mention a film. The worst thing that could happen is you mention a film that you were in, and they go, oh, I don't remember. And I have to say, at least with, without saying anything about quality, I mean, we're the worst person to ask anyway about the quality of our work. That's why I appreciate nice comments like James. But I can say, whether I'm a good actor or not, that you definitely will remember me.
No, I gotta tell you, the one thing like I said, you said you're the Energizer Bunny, and so am I. So I mean, I got guys that are private messaging me. Hurry up and ask my question. Hurry up and ask my question. No. You know what, guys? Tonight, everybody's questions are getting asked. So we're gonna go down the line one by one until I get to the end, or until you get to the point where you say, "Hey, look, dude, I'm beat." But like you said, you're not gonna, apparently.
Let me do this. I'm fine, and I'd love to answer every question. In fact, I'm the kind of actor that loves interviews and publicity because I love people. I just absolutely love people. My record for signing autographs without getting up to take a piss is 4 hours. Because I didn't want people to wait in line, while I took a break for 20 minutes. Had to have a Coke or a cigarette. I don't smoke anyway, but I'm always about people first. So 4 hours, man. I just kept kind of signing. So I'm not only never tired, but if it's for people, I'm kind of all out. But I did want to say, before you ask the next question, I did want to take time in between, because we may not ever get to it, talk about a few projects that I'm getting involved in. And certainly the biggest is to bring breathing to the world in general. I have a breathing system for gamers first, then there will be for athletes, and then for people who have physical injuries, and martial artists are always banged up. So for those martial artists that are listening, I definitely have a breathing system for us. I say us, the martial artists. Excuse me, and presenting this new martial healing system. Also, I'm getting involved with a few companies, if I can be free to mention their name. One of which is called Notifuro, and it's a company of two young guys out of New York, and it's going to be a clothing line just for gamers. Why nobody has done that so far is kind of a mystery, but uh, you know, having this interest in the gaming world, want to create my own video game, all those kinds of things, and I'm totally into fashion and clothing, so I'm very excited to join their group. Um, that is one company. Another company called Ronin, of which a company that makes gis. In fact, that's what I have back here. If and that's why I'm sporting it here for you. Ronin, he said. If you can see that label,
Yep.
Ronin. Yeah. And the movie that Robert De Niro did, Ronin, and a lot of kids know that name, not that all adults do, but a masterless samurai. So a samurai who spent his whole life being devoted to his lord. His lord dies. The period in Japanese history where the samurais were let go, were told that the samurai class was no longer needed in society. So these guys wandered off on their own, and I've kind of felt like my life story is that, a masterless samurai kind of following his own path. So I'm very excited to be part of that company. They're making gear for jiu-jitsu. This is a jiu-jitsu gi. The coolest thing about it, because I'm so fashion oriented, they even have this painting logo on the inside of a samurai, which is very Japanese kind of fashion statement. And so I'm very much looking forward to working with them. Orlando, my buddy, your buddy, down in St. Martin, who's hosting the VX games, the Video X games, this summer in July. Was introduced to him. I'm still in the midst of coming to some agreements, but I've already pretty much committed in my head, unless there's a movie that I absolutely can't avoid. I always, like I said...
He's actually in the chat right now.
Oh, cool. Well, welcome, Rolando. I'm excited to work with you. I'm always about the underdog, always looking... I'm about islands too, about, you know, my not my native home, but really my spiritual home, Hawaii. So very much into island culture and island sort of spirit. So do want to go down and support them this July. So that's another part of what I'm getting into in my projects, is going out directly to tournaments and meeting gamers, promoting the breathing system. Yeah, so those are the kind of things I'm involved in. So back to question.
Okay, well, first of all, a lot of people in there are asking about the gi in the chat already. How can they get their hands on one? Is there links that they can go to as far as sites? Do you have the chat on right now as well?
No, I don't.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You're on the tablet. If you got the links that they can get their hands on this stuff.
And you know, I wish I was business enough to tell you all those things. My guess, because I just hooked up with, I just came back from New York, where of course I met you. I met them, and I was looking to make an agreement with them, of which I haven't, but I'm already into promoting it. It's I like the wear, I wear it. My guess, it would be Ronin.com.
Okay.
And the fact is, they're a smaller company. They're creating a limited number of gis, and doing very well. That gis are not cheap. For those martial artists, know that. But for most of the audience, if I don't come to agreement with them, it's still a field that I want to go into. But it's about sporting the look. You know, for as much as I am real about not hype, and I'm really into fashion. I love clothes, and this is a company that has that kind of thing. So Ronin, RONIN, a native New York company. So check it out online. I haven't even checked it out online. This is how ridiculous a businessman, actor, artist that I am. I like it. I feel it. I'm into it. And even if we don't come to agreement, I'm happy to just say I love this stuff. Yeah.
Okay, one question that
Yeah.
is getting everybody like standing there whether they almost got to pee and they're just saying, please just ask it already.
Mhm.
Are you or are you not going? Are you you're going to be in the new Legacy, correct?
Yes, we just finished that up. It's being edited now. There will be a preview at the Streamy Awards,
Okay.
something I wasn't aware of till just recently, but February, I think it's 12th or 13th, in LA, awards for streaming videos, and certainly they're going to show a piece. Hopefully, I'm going to show up there. And so the question is about legacy, about
It's. Are you going to be in Legacy, and have you been contacted to reprise your role in the Mortal Kombat 3 movie?
the the webisode, of course, is being sponsored by Machinima, and it is a co sort of production with Warner Brothers, who owns, of course, Mortal Kombat, who bought Midway, and the executive producer, excuse me, of both the webisode and the feature, they're the same guys. Wonderful, incredible people, I have to say. I've been very fortunate that most of the time in my experience in Hollywood, I have worked with really great people. This is one of the newest, greatest group, and we very much have the same kind of ideas. We have the same sort of spirit, which is very unusual in Hollywood to meet people that you spiritually connect with. But this group is certainly that. In Legacy, and this is one thing that I fear, and I'm glad to be able to express some of my fears. You know, I'm not just promoting Legacy. I absolutely enjoyed the first season. I really believe in this director, Kevin. Um, Very anxious to become an actor that he works with quite a bit. I want to create projects and looking to Warner Brothers to do that. Here's the danger, guys, and you heard it from Shang. Because of the effect that films have on people, and especially with Mortal Kombat, at a time when kids were most impressionable, you know, 6, 7 to 13 to 14 to 18, 19. Uh, when you as an actor work in the field of kids films, you gotta stay responsible. You know, you got to represent, because you're really part of a kid's life. You're part of a defining moment, and I take it very seriously to be part of this thing. And for what that effect was, and for what now in coming back to the franchise, the only thing I can really take responsibility for is my performance, my role. Now, as far as the story goes, and as far as the delivering of the movie or the webisode by a director, by a studio, that I don't have any control over. And another thing that I don't have control over is what kids expect, you know, in me coming back. And I can just feel it from the response that I've gotten, especially on Twitter. And kids are totally, like, not exaggerating by saying overwhelmed by the fact I'm coming back. And the oddest thing happened last year. I have to share this with you. I'm going back to the Albuquerque Comic-Con in January. In January, we're in January, so in a couple of weeks. And two kids that came to the table that I was signing autograph with, they just looked like they'd seen a ghost. And they just started screaming and then got down on their knees like Wayne's World, and they were saying,
If they're not worthy.
I am not worthy, I am not worthy, kind of stuff. It was just, I was in shock. But I take responsibility that what I did do, and what people do appreciate, and the comment that you made, is very, very serious business. So I'm sorry to say, I don't know what it's gonna. I don't even know what the effect is gonna be. That's the crazy thing about acting. Like even in Mortal Kombat, I didn't realize what I had done. I had just done it, and when I saw the film, I scared myself. When I saw the scene where your brother's soul is mine, you will be next, and I get, you know, like I made that face, but then it morphs into that skeleton. It scared the shit out of me. But so I have to say, I'm proud to be part of Legacy. It's not a huge part. It's enough to tease you, and it's not of the first of the feature that we did. I think the feature, and it was very clear that Kevin was going to make Legacy a little bit more grounded in reality, you know, and the film was absolutely special effects and over the top kind of acting, and it was more cartoony like, and certainly Legacy is not as much, and Kevin's trying to make it that way. I can't speak for the film, although yes, I have been approached to do that. I'll have to make the determination. I hate to say this, especially to fans who would really like to have me play Shang Tsung again. It's really going to depend on the script. Here's the one thing that I was happy about in not coming back to the second film. I was really excited. Lyndon and Robin and Bridget, we were all excited about doing the sequel. And when that didn't happen, it was such a devastating letdown. But having seen the second one, honestly, East Coast style, I'm glad I wasn't part of it.
So was a lot of people. I mean, honestly, I mean, to all the diehard Mortal Kombat fans out there, they will tell you Annihilation was nothing short of something that should have been in a recycle bin. You know,
Yeah.
they really they dropped the ball on it. That's why, like I said, you know, when they're asking about the third one, now that they finally actually said that, hey, we are going to do a third one, I don't see them having no choice but to approach you because they dropped the ball. They don't want to drop the ball again on the franchise.
Yeah, and you know, you would assume that, and I think in Hollywood, it's fair to say that most assumptions live up to the word assume. And you know, just when you think they couldn't, they can, and they do quite a bit. I think this particular group of producers are different, and they do care about the fans, and they do care about making a movie. So I'm only hoping for the best. It almost sounds like I'm apologizing before I even do it, but I just want the fans to know, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever happens with Legacy, whatever happens in being part of the feature or not, I am so honored at your response, all of you fans, to Shang. I never expected it. You know, for us actors, that's our job. We work, we act. We don't ever really know what's going to happen. I'm overwhelmed by the response throughout these years. Come on, you know, 94, bro. That's like 13 years ago, he said. Is that right? Yeah, 13, 14 years ago. 18? No. Come on, James, help me out here.
Yeah, that's... Oh, wait, now you're going to make me do math? I didn't say I could stay up all day. I didn't say I could do functional things.
It's almost 19 years.
Yeah, 19 years.
Yeah. That's like, you know, having experienced something when you were 1 and now you're 20 kind of thing. And I still have the juice to do it. I have to say that. I got the passion to bring Shang back in a second. I mean, I'm sure that the fans have heard that in the voice in hearing Shang earlier this evening and last week. I'll always have that. Whether the situation in the script will equal that. The one thing about actors and roles, if I never do it again, the first one stands on its own forever. The worst case scenario is to come back and not be able to deliver that. That I have no problem with delivering the energy of, but if that vehicle doesn't match it and people are let down, I dread that the most. You know, considering that the fans are most important for me, and dealing with an iconic character, if I can call Shang an iconic character. I don't want to mess with it unless it's worthy of the energy and the love of the fans. Otherwise, no matter how much money it is, it's something that I won't do if it's not that. So hopefully they'll listen to my input and allow me to be part of the creative process. Because
pretty much this guy Limbo Dog's in the chat saying no matter how crappy the script is, you need to play Shang again.
Oh, well, I appreciate that support. You know, that's the kind of unconditional, undying support that really inspires me so much, and especially as a father. You know, it's like your kids always supporting you, and knowing that Shang is not only the iconic kind of character, but also a sign of kind of manhood. You know, and I think that's why the love of bad guys in a certain way. Bad guys don't pull any punches. You know, if they do, they might as well join the good guys and be wimps. But I'm always happy to be able to play strong men. I think we're kind of lacking that in mentors and, you know, inspirational figures in the society today, especially with politicians and businessmen, not to mention any directly, but they're not very inspirational to me or representative of men. You know, that's the worst case scenario here, is that we keep going in a direction where men just, they're not honorable. They're not the kind of people you want to look up to. They're not the kind of men that you want your young boys to grow up to be. And hopefully, you know, even that I played so many bad guys, there's no question my characters are men. They may be bad men, but they are men, in fact. They're not wimps. They're not any half-baked kind of men. So, yeah.
All right, my next question is coming from OBS Original Razor all the way from Ireland. So he's up late, or early, actually he's up early. Apparently you and some of the actors had problems with some of the production crew during MK's filming. Can you shed any light on this?
Production crew, meaning producers.
Yeah.
Kind of meaning asshole producers. No problem at all. And I won't mention, and legally and slander and all those kind of things, but basically that group of producers, of course, everybody in the MK world knows that later on there were a lot of other problems, and the fact that the third film didn't have a chance of being made up till now because of that group of guys. And it was enough in the experience of the first one to be happy not to work with the second one before we found out how bad it was going to turn out, just for the sake of having worked with that group. Very kind of not so good news about Hollywood, stereotypic production kind of group. There were actors that didn't want to work if it was going to be that group. So luckily, them not being involved in this third one was very exciting to me, because I loved the experience. I loved what happened, the subsequent response to it, the cult following, the continuance of the video game, but that part of the experience wasn't anything that I could really say nice about it. And like all mothers like to say, you know, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything. So, yes, it was that kind of situation. In fact, I lost it one time, pretty much.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't about being a difficult actor. It was just very clearly, you know, there's a certain point of respect as a human being. And I don't care who you are or what you think you are or what you're doing. It's like that don't work with me. I have a point where I'm the calmest, peaceful, most peaceful guy that you could ever meet, and you can attest to that, James.
Yes.
And my intentions are perfectly, honestly clear, and of what I believe to be of the right energy and good and all those things. But by the time I get pissed, it's for a good reason. And I got so pissed. Well, here's the situation, and it wasn't necessarily just their fault or who they were, but it was a matter of question of respect, which we won't get into specifically. But what was happening? We have a thing called cover set, and it's a common it's in every production where if something because of weather you can't shoot one place, you always have a cover set somewhere that can be shot on days like that. Well, I was kind of the cover for Goro, so I kind of stayed around for endless days when Goro was shooting. In case Goro broke down, we'd shoot a Shang Tsung scene. And after a while, it got kind of abusive. And one time, one of the ADs on the set got a little disrespectful, and I blew out at him with the energy of Shang Tsung. I mean, I do have that within me to do. Luckily, it's not something that I need to do, or am proud of doing it. But I did it, and it scared them so bad that they said, "Okay, fine, we'll find something else that can be done. Why don't you go home to Hawaii for a week?"
That's a good deal.
So, it was the first time that ever happened, but yeah, we had a little problem, and I let it out, and they solved it, and I was happy to stay at home in Hawaii instead of sitting around in my trailer all day long for days on end.
I mean, I can attest how ADs can be because I spent New Year's in a house full of ADs, and I mean, to have 20 of them in a room, is, I mean, it's a nightmare.
It is.
One trying to outdo the other. It's like two guys act as if they're the best friends, but then meanwhile, they're stabbing each other in the back on the opposite sides of the room, and they're all doing it to each other. And I'm sitting here going, I just want to, enjoy the new year. You guys are fighting over petty stuff that, to be honest, I didn't even care about.
Well, one thing I have to say though, in their favor, because it's not really their fault. A good AD is priceless. A guy that can help support the director in a way to get his film done and stay ahead of them and keep them moving and scheduling. It's not an easy job, and they get abused quite a bit themselves. And in this particular case, he just kind of went over the boundary. He had forgotten or had been so abused himself, certainly. So there are great ADs. I'm really thankful for the job that they do. I would never do that. There's no place but in front of the camera that I'm really set for. I could produce, I could direct, but really,
I've tried a little bit from on the other side of the camera, and it's just unrelentless directors.
Yeah.
Producers that never come on a set. Actually, here, listen to me, sound like I'm a Hollywood guy. Producers coming on the set that were never there before, and all of a sudden one day they're there, acting as if they've been there since day one, and I just, it's one, like I said, when we went out, it was one of the things that kind of, until somebody says, hey, I'm going to give you a job that will allow you to quit what you do on the norm. There's no way I can go on a film shoot. I've had guys say, oh, come do my movie. We're going to go to, whatever, Thailand for 3 months. I'm like, all right, well, on the 4th month when I come back home, because you say 3 months, that means 4 months. On the 4th month when I come home, what am I going to do for a living after? Because I won't have a job to come back to.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's one thing that in our society we have let Hollywood get away with so much just for the sake of who Hollywood thinks they are, and we certainly, you know, have kissed their butts too much. It's ridiculous how much Hollywood ggets away with. I'm
25
not,
$25 a shot for a ticket now.
yeah, it's way overboard. I think it's really pushing the future of people watching product that isn't from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And certainly webisodes are one way that it's going to make a big difference. Cable already has made a big difference. And I'm looking to do my own webisodes. So,
All right, let me get to my next question
yeah.
because me and you will talk nonstop, and everybody's gonna to hit me
Okay.
up again. Apart from Shang Tsung,
Uh-huh.
what was your favorite acting role or movie that you've worked on?
You know, I had the question asked the other day, and it was the first time it was asked in this particular way, and I thought it was quite creative. They said, three of your favorite. It wasn't like the single favorite. And you have to understand, in 26 years, that's quite a quite a long time. But I can give you three. Let me give you three. One was a movie very little known called The Last Warrior, and it was one of the first films that I did. We shot in South Africa. It was during apartheid, so there was a lot of opposition to SAG actors even going to South Africa. The story of one Japanese soldier who lands on an island and is looking for an American soldier who's a coast watcher, a guy who reports movements of ships going past islands. And, you know, to me, especially about World War II, and especially the energy about Japanese and, you know, the Japanese military. One thing that I've always been real keen about, that racism being based on all that, you gotta remember that who we've considered our enemy and can be so hateful about, they're only protecting and doing what we think we're doing by fighting a war. I've always had respect, and that's part of the culture, and certainly martial arts, about respect for your opponent. I always wanted to play a Japanese soldier in an honorable way, and I got a chance to do that in this movie called The Last Warrior. So that certainly was one of my favorite. Rising Sun was one of my favorites, to play a Japanese playboy, which was like playing an alien landed on the planet, because there's never been another movie about a Japanese playboy, so I was lucky to have been part of that. There's one other character in a very little-known series called Space Rangers, in which I did play an alien, and he was from a warrior planet, and he actually had to wear this sort of collar around his neck in order to curb his sort of violent tendencies. Really love that character, really love developing him. Very much a samurai kind of honorable character. So those are around the three. I certainly love the characters in Showdown in Little Tokyo. Got to be the most ruthless
Yeah,
person.
that was pretty badass. I mean, I don't know who was. I mean, stealing souls and all. That's that's kind of bad. But in that one, you really, yeah. I mean, like I said, especially when it came out, it was in my I believe in my 20s, and and even in my 20s, it made me say, "Damn, I ain't fucking with this guy."
And also had a great experience in playing the only Japanese member of the Mexican mob in American Me.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's something. It's a hardcore prison movie, and we went into Folsom Prison. We were the first group that was allowed to shoot directly inside the prison, which was quite a distinction. And we were out in the yard with 1,000 inmates. The guards could identify us in between takes because we put on these special jackets with fluorescent sort of armbands, so that they could, if something went down, they wouldn't accidentally shoot us. It was quite an experience, heavy duty. So that's one of my favorite movies. Yeah.
All right, Limbo Dog asks, um, do you have any pending movies right now you can talk about? Are any of them martial art related? Because he damn well needs to play a role as a Grand Sensei. We need more movies with him.
Well, thank you for that. I'm again always honored when people appreciate what I do. I have to say that in terms of martial arts movies, for my history in them at a time in which what should I say? The popularity of martial arts movies during the time that I did them was nothing less than pop culture, kind of popcorn stuff, and I'm not so sure that I'm. I mean, I'm going to hear it from all sides, but that I'm not really right for that anymore. Not that I can't do martial arts, but and this is one of the first times I've ever said this. I'm not so interested in doing those kind of roles anymore. I think it served a purpose at its time, and certainly the age that I was and the look, the certain look during Showdown Little Tokyo, and those kinds of movies. I'm definitely looking older. I'm fine with being older. It's a different kind of character that I would be playing. And everyone certainly considers the roles that I play to be badass enough and want that more. But I'll tell you the truth, I'm fine with something like Mortal Kombat because it's not so much about reality. He said, that I'd rather be playing those kind of roles. I'm more interested in creating those kind of intense mentor kind of characters. But like in video games, I'm finding a lot more interest in producing those kind of characters in movies, and possibly playing more of a positive mentor, good guy role. Badass. What I'm more interested in doing is saving asses. As a healer, my whole thing really is about getting people to understand how they can be in better health on their own. I'm just, so much about healing and people feeling better and not representing people that go around hurting people all the time. It just, I appreciate the appreciation. My heart's not so in it. I can do it, having said that, I'm not so interested in it. I did one last year where I played this bad guy, a gangster, a Russian Kazakh kind of character. Part of the reason why I got into that certainly is supporting first-time directors. I'm always about, like I said, underdogs, and for first-time directors who may never get a chance to work with sort of A-list actors, if I can be so presumptuous to call myself that. I like to seek them out, and the film that I did last year was certainly a first-time director from Kazakhstan, and they like their bad guys over the top.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a couple of movies that were filmed over there that made me say, "Wow, it's a whole." It's a whole different world. It really is a whole different world. We got a top player that's turned me on to a lot of Eastern European movies. That this player Rio, and he likes the horror stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, when I was a kid, I saw the Faces of Death, and all those scary movies that you were like, wow, and those are like watching a cartoon
Yeah,
compared
yeah.
to some of the stuff that they do.
So I
But
did.
speaking,
did
let me
yeah.
spin this since you mentioned healing.
Hmm.
Limbo Dog asked this other question, and he made sure it's a serious question.
Hmm.
Being that you're into the healing, what is your views on cannabis, and now with the legalization of it in some places?
Well, the range of cannabis being different from most drugs. Um, First of all, it's probably the only drug put in the category of drugs that has a Native American base. It's considered medicine, and medicine in the sense of being the use of an herb or of something of nature for a higher spiritual purpose. And so it has a distinction of starting in that kind of energy. And then also during the early part of the century, I believe, that it was still legal, that it had so many different uses that actually are functional. And so much so that I believe there's other political reasons why it has been kept in this category for so long. I personally have experience. I'm not Bill Clinton. I wasn't the guy who smoked it and didn't inhale. I inhaled. I
Yeah,
inhaled
yeah, we
it.
all did. I did. I inhaled a couple of times, I must admit, but it was
And
it was just never something I really gravitated towards at the end.
yeah, and that's what happened with me also. I was always the kind of guy who had experimental tendencies, and so I would try things, but I never got wrapped into something that I couldn't just walk away from. And what I find is, for all the political reasons against it, it has some real value that we haven't even begun to understand. I don't encourage it. Uh, I encourage consciousness more, to be more aware of what you're doing. If you're going to use it, I would like to hear that you're using it for some other reason than just instead of drinking beer.
Yeah.
Which, it's to me, it's something more. It's in a category that's different from other kind of things that are considered drugs. So I don't encourage it. I know objectively it has some purpose, and I'm promoting something that's much more powerful, breath and consciousness. So that's the truth.
Where are we? What is this guy's name? Emo Scooby Doo asks, "What do you think of Taoism or Taoism?"
Taoism is an absolute system that has pretty far out perception. And that perception is that our true nature is very much a duplication of the essence of what nature is. Their belief is that we simply are part of nature, and the rhythm of what nature is, in the kind of things that go from season to season, things that grow, things that die, and that there's not a whole lot of reason to exert our will in our lives, which means for the majority of people who are ambitious in business and all those kind of things, these guys are nuts. Taoists are totally whacked out nuts. But I believe that there's a purpose in it, and certainly I don't live that lifestyle, but I am influenced by the perception that there's something more to us than just our little egos and how much money we make and all that kind of stuff, which today is a big question that's up with the economic situation the way it is and people having to live with a lot less. I've been all around the world in situations in different economic levels. And I have to say that I've found some people, and a lot of people, not that, you know, I encourage total poverty, but that live in a poverty situation with absolute smiles on their face. They are existing. They are living. They're the kind of people that during this time when, you know, our country in massive economic kind of situation, that because we can't drive because the gas is so high to go do something ridiculously frivolous that we freak out. I mean, that upsets me a little bit. You know, I think we need to get back to basics, helping each other.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, and looking at what really is important, what isn't so important. Yeah. So, yeah, all that being said, Taoism, I think is kind of cool. I don't think I could do it strictly, but it's a very, to me, very cool philosophy that we should live more in rhythm with things that are natural. I like it. A good book is A Wandering Taoist, for those of you that want to understand it a little bit more.
All right. Brant McCaskill, better known as Pig of the Hut, who we just had a big tournament in Chicago this weekend. Congratulations to Pig for winning it. Asks, what were some of the scenes made for the MK film that never made it past the cutting room floor? Do you remember of any?
You know, there was a lot that I remember from reading the script.